Hey, welcome. This is the week 4 adding CSS assignment demonstration for WDD 130. And I'd just like to take this time to review the module with my students. So if you're watching this video, welcome. This is going to run through how we can best optimize images, add a little bit of CSS, and adjust the organization for our HTML in what we're calling the assignment 04, adding more HTML and CSS. So let's go look at it, shall we? In this assignment, we pick up from what we left off doing, which was adding the simple organization according to this wireframe. So I hope all of you have taken a look at this. We will review this frequently, and so it's recommended you become familiar with it and even just keep it saved as a bookmark or a tab that you leave idle open up here, so you can refer to it. You'll notice I have 2 activated right now. I only need 1 at the moment. So this is it. Essentially, we're going to take our page, and what we're doing in week 4 is we're centering it, which means we need to add some margin, okay, to the left and the right, and we need to add some to the top and the bottom. And there's a simple way we can adjust margin for elements and the actual page with CSS. So we will use margin today. We will also come down here in the footer and we will add some images for our social media icons. And clicking on those should also redirect us, or the user, to those social media websites. In addition to that, we will experiment with background colors for elements as well as type. So we'll do background colors for perhaps a footer to show you, and we'll do a color for type inside the body, which may include headings and paragraphs. So yes, we'll color type, we will color backgrounds, we will add images that link to websites, and we will add margin to center things properly. Besides that, I think we're pretty good. I don't think we're doing anything else beyond that in week 4. Just to verify what's expected, it's always good to begin with the end in mind, because this is how I will be grading you. Okay, so I just mentioned it. Make sure your HTML is well formed and without errors. So I do recommend validating your work once you're all finished. So try to center text. Again, 1 class and 1 ID should be styled in CSS. And yeah, try to color backgrounds and text. Use images on social media, and I'll show you where you can go to get that. And then as well, look here. We don't have to actually go to the other pages yet, but you should at least include them in the links. And if they go to an empty page that's not developed, that's fine too. So let's get to it. Let's scroll up here to the top. I'm going to just skip through these steps up to the top. And you'll notice here in 1, review the wireframe. Coming on down here, it's a good idea to group similar elements nested into divs or sections. So if you come on down here, the first thing I want you to do is work on your internal links. Make sure you have them nested properly. So I'll show you what I've been doing. This is my dry or website. And you'll notice here in my navigation, I have my listed items all contained in an unordered list. I have a home page called index.html. I have a facts page for frequently asked questions. And I have a contact.html page with the keyword contact that's visible. Remember, you only see what's visible in a link with what you put in between the anchor element. Okay, tags. We open the anchor, and then the href establishes to where do we go and redirect. Then we close the opening anchor element, and then we fill in here the words that we'll click or press on, and then we close the anchor element to say we're done with this link, we're now closing it, and then we close that listed item. So this is how mine looks. You'll see I've completed assignment 4, just like you'll be doing this week. And you'll notice some things. It's actually got some style to it. It's a lot more engaging than last week's week 3 HTML example. I've got some background color going on. I have it centered using margin. I've even styled this heading, well, every heading that's a H2 to have the same color. I have the type is actually just default black. I haven't adjusted that. I can show you in this example. And then down at the bottom, I have some social media icons, images. You notice I haven't adjusted those with margin left yet, so I'll be doing that to demonstrate. as well as adjusting this type to maybe appear red, even though red isn't what I want. I'll show you how to do that. And then you'll see here I've gotten my navigational listed items to all be on the same line. So I've targeted those listed items. And I've also targeted my logo to be further from the left. And there's some things we can do in CSS to accomplish that. So let's start with the first one, external links. You're welcome here again to use these or find some on your own. You could like save image as or open image in a new tab. And you'll notice the new image we've opened is a PNG file called facebook.png, and it's 64 pixels wide and 64 pixels high. So if that's what I chose to use, okay, that's what I would see, a 64 pixel square Facebook icon. Now what did I use? Let's go check. I actually went online and found this one. If I click on this one, I actually found one that was 128 by 128. So it's funny to say this is twice the size, isn't it, of that one. So does it look that large if you go down here? No, I've actually scaled it down. And this is something you can do as well. If we come back to my index.html file here, let's go look at my social media icons in the footer. I recommend that you in the footer establish your text in a paragraph element like is shown, and then nest all of your social media icons in a div called social. Okay, classified as social. And then again, to open a link, we use anchor element. We establish where we're linking to, the facebook.com website. And then here in the image element, we have a source attribute that needs to be declared with the URL of my image. So that's actually copying the URL from my assets folder right here. I clicked here, I clicked copy. And then I came back to index.html, and that's what I pasted here. And look, I actually physically adjusted this with HTML. You can do this with CSS as well, but I like to do this physically in HTML. So you can use an image editor. You can also just be bossy and take over control of the width and height here. I've set it to 50 by 50, which is a bit smaller than this 64 by 64. I didn't want a social media icon that large. But let's go test it, okay? Let's test these images I've placed. I've done Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Each of them has a different image. They all share the same width and height properties. So let's visit, okay? Let's click Show in a new window, and it loads my page. And if I come down here, let's click on Facebook. Ta-da! It's going to my Facebook profile. Let's back out, and let's test this one. Oh, I actually lost it. Let's click Show again in a new window. Let's now test Instagram. Again, click on it. Yes, you'll notice it's asking if I want to log in. No, I don't really use Instagram very much. We'll back out. Let's preview once more for YouTube in a new window. So you'll want to test each of your links. You click on them and see where it takes you. And there we go. You can see I've been watching some of these videos, mostly my kids, right? They've hijacked my computer and they like to watch videos. So lots of these are kid shows. Again, if you're logged in, you'll see your YouTube channel pop up. So let's close out of that. And we see here we're done with the footer. So the next portion of this assignment has you move beyond external links to adding CSS here. Now we're doing external CSS, so we need to make sure our link element has been established in the head of our page. So if I come up here on index.html, you'll notice in the head element I do have that external link here to a style sheet that's called styles.css. And if you don't declare this properly, you will not see the CSS change anything. And this can be very frustrating, so don't let it happen to you. Use this syntax, establish a relationship, the type, and the href. Href refers to the name of the file that contains the CSS. Mine is styles.css right here. If we come to my styles.css, check it out. We're at the 9-minute mark. This is my demonstration of the CSS that I've done. You'll notice I've applied a background color to what? To my body. And so in CSS, this is the syntax you have to understand. You have to identify a selector you'd like to target. And then once you have a selector established, you have to identify a property you'd like to change, like color for type. And then you can simply give it a value. And then always end your values with a semicolon and separate the properties and values with a colon, just like you see here. This is a perfectly good example for syntax. If you can understand this after week 4, you're well on your way to learning and trying out different things with CSS. Again, target a selector, whether that's the body of the whole page, and body being, if you look here, body is everything inside here. So if I style my body, it's going to affect everything. Well, what everything? Oh, the background color of the body. So if I were to change this, and let me copy it, just so I don't lose it, and I copy it and remove it and say black, right? This is what you'll see. If I now show my page in a new window, I now have a black background, okay? So that's how CSS works. You establish the selector, the property, name, and then the value. So let's bring back what I had, because you'll notice that was something I did here with the coolers.co theme, our color theme generator. I used one of these colors. Can you find out which one it was? It was this off black, okay? Technically it's a brown, okay? So I used that from my site plan assignment, and I adjusted it right here. So I'm going to paste that back so I don't lose it. Click back, and yeah, it kind of looks like a brown or olive green. You'll be doing the same thing, okay? Creating background colors. Now, if you want to center your entire assignment, you'll find that down here a little bit more, beyond the color that we've just shown you. You can also target headers, right, as a selector. H2, and give that a background color. And that will affect every single H2 on the page, okay? If you want to affect maybe different headers, then you just have to tell it. Like I've told it here, every single header, okay, I'd like to be this color. I could change it up and say, no, just H1, H3, H4, H5, H6. I could do that, so those are in those colors, in which case I would omit the 2, or H2. So just know you make a selector, include a comma after the selector if you're going to include multiple selectors. But one thing you'll notice looking at my page, I only have H2s. If you look at it, I've only got H2s throughout. So that was a little redundant to target selectors that aren't even on my page. Okay, so essentially I only need to target H2s because I'm only using H2s. But in the future, if I were to use them, okay, they would inherit this color if I establish it. So let's go check. Yeah, the color is still working for my headers. So you do want to do that. Okay. Moving on, a bit more structure needs to be established as well. You'll notice it's recommended you create a div, kind of like a wrapper, if you've seen other examples online. What we're doing is creating a wrapper, if you will, and we're wrapping all of our content in the body in a new div called content. So we assign that an ID, we give it a name, content, and then we close that div right before we close the body. And that's what I've done here as well. I have to come back to my index.html file, and here we go. Where is it? It's right here. I open my body, and then I open my div ID content, and then I down here remember to close that same div. And notice this, it's pretty nice. In Glitch, if you highlight an element, it's going to show in that color every other instance of that element. Okay, so you see I'm only using what? One div here, closed, closed. Oh, it's highlighting all the closed divs. And this should highlight all the open divs that I made, okay, of div ID content. So that's very useful, okay? I can show you this is a class, okay? All the div classes I've done. So add some structure. The reason we do that is so that we can adjust a max width for that selector. So we could target content, okay, in CSS and give it a max width so that it doesn't stretch too far. Okay, and this is what we do with max width. It's saying my paragraph can extend indefinitely, no, up until, there it is, 960 pixels, right there. And then it stops, and I can continue to scale my page, and it's not going to stretch beyond a max width of 960 if you add that. So some other things before we close this screencast, I do suggest using a max width on your content ID. Block versus inline, I do this as well, if you notice. With my navigation, let's check that CSS out here. My CSS shows that I'm targeting my nav anchors to give them a color, even a font weight boldness to make them stand out. To remove bullet points, do this. Target the unordered list and say list style type none. Listed items are inline elements, but if you want them to be on the same line, target the property display and make them inline. And then finally, how did I get everything to align about 30 pixels in? If you look here, it's about 30 pixels in, 30 pixels in, 30 pixels in. I did that with CSS, a margin left property as well. So again, when you're ready to center it, you do margin 0 auto, save your page, and make sure you share it